We're at week 14 in the fantasy football season. For many, it's the last regular season week before we jump into the playoffs. Here to help us with the rankings for week 14 will be Kev Mahserejian, right next on the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Jeff Erickson here, and I've got the great Kev Mahserejian, a.k.a. at RotoSurgeon, a.k.a. your twice in a row weekly defending champion of the Fantasy Pros ranking contest. Kev, congratulations, first of all, and second of all, thanks for joining me.
I feel like that great in front of Kev Mahserejian was a little extra, a little superfluous.
Oh, so you're great, man. You're here. I appreciate it.
Let's hold off on that. It's week 12, week 13. The playoffs are coming up. Those are the weeks that are really going to be, cashing our checks and whatnot. So, thank you, Jeff, for having me on. It's always a pleasure to join the RotoWire Fantasy Football Pod. It is really cool to see my rankings, bolstered and hit number one. But, again, a lot of season left. I'm only third overall. Sean Kerner is kicking my ass. So we got a lot of the way to go.
So before we go any farther, where can people find your rankings?
You could go to my Patreon. It is, RotoSurgeon. You can just look that up, or it's on my Twitter at RotoSurgeon, just linked up directly on my page. I do discuss football on Twitter all the time. So, you can kind of get the gist of what I feel on a lot of guys throughout the week. So, just basically my stream of consciousness on Twitter or Patreon for $9.99.
All right, very cool. Do you have do you have an algorithm, or is it your gut rankings? How do you go about doing this without giving the whole secret, the whole story?
Okay, so it's kind of half and half, like, a hashtag, watching ball or knowing ball or whatever. But preseason, I set my projections, and then throughout the season, as we were provided new information and injuries and all of that good stuff, I kind of adjust expectations. So I'm kind of working with a lot of priors, honestly, because general stuff like target share, quarterback pass volume, quarterback touchdown percentage, interception percentage, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of that is sticky year over year, and game to game, a lot. Matchups do matter a ton. So, I utilize DVOA. I utilize, statistics that show any sort of outliers, but I don't have any sort of algorithm week to week. I'm just kind of working with my preseason projections mixed in with what I see throughout the season, along with new information that's provided. And, like a Tank Dell and Puka Nacua, I didn't see that coming. I didn't see that coming a mile away. So seeing them become, unfortunately, Tank Dell's out now, but, adjusting to have them in top 24 weekly rankings is something that I have to work with, which I didn't know prior to the season, or Cooper Kupp being hurt. That's new information that I didn't, have preseason, but you kind of mix that all in with the numbers you have. And I work based on DVOA and matchups and all that good stuff throughout the week to figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I do rankings, and it's, you have to have all these different inputs, and then you get a guy that breaks the system, and it's like, okay, well, we got to change the system then. If it breaks it, we can't just lean on that exclusively, and we have to move on. So again, check out Kev's Patreon, RotoSurgeon. Follow him on Twitter at RotoSurgeon, and you'll see all that he has to offer. Let's just jump into it here. It's like I said, it's the last week of the fantasy regular season for a lot of people. If you have 6 or more teams that make the playoffs, you start in week 15. So this is a huge week. Only 2 teams on bye, although it's still, I think it's really crazy that we still have byes in week 14. But Arizona and Washington, that hurts our Sam Howell, hurts a couple of guys, but it's not exactly devastating. It's not like apocalypse that we've had 2 or 3 times earlier this year. But quarterback, I want to start off Jordan Love. He is rolling. He played well in a tough matchup against the Chiefs last week. How high do you have him this week?
I had him top 10 last week. I have him top 10 this week. The Giants' pass defense is somewhat average, but they are a very weak run defense. Attackers do tend to lean on A.J. Dillon early on, and then they kind of move off him based on game script and whatnot. But I have him top 10 because he rushes. He's been very efficient throwing the football. I think it's 6% of his passes are going for touchdowns. Christian Watson may be out due to his hamstring injury, but luckily they have another rookie stud wide receiver in Dontavian Wicks that they could just elevate. Yep. They lost Luke Musgrave, and they have Tucker Kraft coming in and providing legitimate value. The Green Bay Packers post Aaron Rodgers drafted so well. I mean, Romeo Dobbs from last year, Christian Watson again, he's hurt, but like Dobbs has stepped up this year. He has like 7 touchdowns or so. They have weapons. They have solid protection. They always have a solid O line. And Love, I think this is a legitimate breakout. I think he could be their franchise quarterback. I would extend him. I would give him some sort of like Daniel Jones, Geno Smith type deal to keep him along at least the next like 3 years.
Yeah, and we see what it's like to be a have-not in the NFL with all these quarterback injuries or just bad quarterback situations. So absolutely, I get it there. It's so funny though. Like 6 weeks ago, the narrative on Love and the Packers was so much different. You know, like, oh, they screwed up and they're going to have to start all over. This could be one of the bottom 3 teams in the NFC and all of that. And now they're in the playoffs, and Love is now we're talking extension with him. But you know, give it time, let him play. This is, you know, you see this all the time. Like quarterbacks actually need reps. They need to see, you know, before we make a full evaluation of a player. So I get it. Jake Browning tore it up on Monday night, much to my pleasure. Did not see that coming though. Was also much to my surprise. What do we do for an encore with Jake Browning after he tears up? Now he gets the Colts.
The Colts are weirdly top 10 against the pass. And they're getting Grover Stewart back from, I believe it was a suspension, 6-game PD or substance. I forgot what it exactly was. So they're getting their nose tackle back, which is pretty huge because, you know, he's one of their most important pieces along the D-line. But, I mean, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Joe Mixon's looking really good as a receiver. He has weapons, so he's very much so in streamer consideration. I wouldn't prioritize a Jake Browning. Like if you have a Justin Herbert, I wouldn't start him over Justin Herbert, though he's in a much worse matchup with worse weapons. But you could do worse than a Jake Browning. I think he's definitely in the top 20. He looked solid. I just wouldn't really want to start Jake Browning.
I wouldn't either, but I mean, I feel like there's some sketchy stuff here. I've got him at 14. So it's kind of like if I had Howell, I'd go to Browning, you know, because I'm not going to find I'd go to him over Jameis. And that was going to be my next guy I wanted to bring up because, you know, I don't know how much I can trust Jameis.
I mean, how much can you trust Jake Browning? It's like, it's all
agreed.
bad.
Oh, I agree.
Jameis at least has the Jameis factor where, yes, he could throw 3 picks, but he could also throw 3 touchdowns. And I'd much rather have that than the safe play because Indianapolis and Carolina are both like kind of run funnels. Like they're both very weak against the run. Indy is getting Grover Stewart back, as I mentioned. But I just feel like at home, Jameis, Chris Olave's healthy. Michael Thomas, I feel like Michael Thomas was holding the offense back. I think with Jameis under center, Shaheed might play. We don't know. But, you know, just having Olave, he's more than willing to just throw it downfield. The only scary factor is Taysom Hill sniping touchdowns at the goal line. But Jameis does like to run a little bit, so you never know. I think I'd go with Jameis in a weird game script against Carolina over Jake Browning just because at least there's history.
I could see it, but my counter argument is at least Browning has Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Joe Mixon to throw to and Tyler Boyd and a pretty good offensive line that's at least a reasonable offensive line that did well to give them time on Monday night. The other thing is they're going to be a tired ass offensive line after playing 5 quarters on Monday night too. In a short rest. So there's a counter argument. Question in the chat: Jake Browning or Joshua Dobbs, who was announced as the starter again this week?
Dobbs. I have Dobbs a fringe top 10 because I mean the Raiders defense it's been better since Pierce took over, but you know, Dobbs should get Justin Jefferson back. You want to talk weapons? Jefferson, Addison, Hockenson, all the Sons. I'm going Dobbs.
Okay. All right. I was not that high on Dobbs, so I may have to reconsider my prior.
My bad.
No, it's not your bad. That's why we discussed.
I'm giving it away. I can't be giving all that. I'm kidding. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I have Dobbs around like 20, 21.
Okay.
But that might be some recency bias. You know, when we last saw him, they were contemplating switching him out. I mean, it was so bad on Monday, against the Bears.
That's the factor that, like, there is the bench factor. So maybe I am too high on Dobbs, but if he plays the full game, he runs a good bit too, or he's capable of running, if anything. Yeah. So I don't know. I think that's a good game for Dobbs to get right, if anything, because like he is very much so benchable right now. Not that the options, Jaron Hall and Nick Mullins, are that much better.
Agreed. And that's just the thing too. Like, I think there's the idea of Nick Mullins, the untested, unknown, but veteran ex-Niner. It's like him and Beathard both. I put them in the same pile, even though they're different people completely. But last one before we move to a different position. What's your take on Beathard here with this Jacksonville offense? Terrible matchup at Cleveland, because it's in Cleveland. Road Cleveland is weird, but I think this is one I'm not really sure I'm that confident on.
Yeah, same. He has to face Denzel Ward looks like he's returning. Myles Garrett should be another week healthier from his shoulder. He was non-existent basically versus the Rams last week. Yeah, he shouldn't have even played, but I get it. He's Myles Garrett. He wants to win, DPOY and whatnot. So that's cool. But overall, I wouldn't even bother with Beathard. I don't care. He has decent weapons, but the O-line I think it's hurting right now. So they're not even full strength. Like Walker Little got hurt last week, and he's their second left tackle. So I'm not looking to start Beathard whatsoever.
Gotcha. I'm not either. I think that the trickier question is, what do you do with his parts? What do you do with Ridley? What do you do with Ingram? What do you do with anybody else in that offense there? ETN even ETN I have to downgrade a little bit this week.
The Cleveland Browns run defense, the last month, has been gashed. So at least there's that for ETN. I'm going to have him in the RB2 range, but I'm not going to want to start him. If you have a Raheem Mostert, if you have even a Keaton Mitchell, I'd rather start Keaton Mitchell because he got 60% of the snaps last game. He's facing a really bad Rams run defense. I think there's more upside there. I don't want to say upside because ETN has so much, but I would be tempted to do something like that.
The total in that game is at 30.5. So there's not a whole lot of fantasy goodness coming out of this on either side. And this week is gross. The NFL has really kind of ratcheted down the totals over the course of the season. Not the NFL has, but the bookies have. New England Pittsburgh is at 30, straight up 30. I made the Iowa Steelers comparison joke, but it really is Iowa. It really is the Big Ten West now.
God, I hate it. I honestly, I'm very grateful. I'm off at 6 tomorrow. I'm going to be driving home. I'm not going to be watching that game. I'm more than happy to say it. This is the first primetime game I'm going to miss in all season.
I'll be on air, even because we're on from 5 to 7 at Best Coast time. So, there's everyone. They've been, we got a couple of good ones lately. Like Dallas, Seattle was amazing.
Oh, beautiful, chef's kiss. That was a perfect football game.
Yeah.
Everything you could want. You had the shootout. You had Geno throwing darts. You had DK go off. You had CeeDee Lamb go off. It was everything you could ask. Jackson Smith and Jigba, even he got 11 targets or so. So you saw him kind of coming along. I couldn't be more ecstatic last Thursday, but now it's just we're due for a lull.
Yeah, for sure. And we had Monday night was amazing as well. So we absolutely due for a lull. We get 2 Monday night games next week, this week, I should say. Yeah. Neither of them really are really doing a whole lot to excite me, but we'll get to those. But yeah, I'm looking at all these totals this week. And yes, we get some high ones too. We get Philly, Dallas. We do get KC, Buffalo. So we have some eyewash for the badness, but we there's some bad. That early slate is just, listen to this. It's Tampa Bay, Atlanta, 39. Detroit, Chicago, okay, 41.5, but still, that might be okay. Indy, Cincy might have some fun to it. We'll see. Colts always play weird games, so that I always kind of keep an eye on that. But Jacksonville, Cleveland, 30.5. Carolina, New Orleans, Houston, Jets. Take a beautiful
Zach Wilson. We're getting Zach Wilson back. He's back.
Early slate's terrible.
I'm going to be watching. I will watching. Too, I will be tuned in to Red Zone, but overall, God bless Red Zone because I cannot watch, the full 60 minutes of any of these games except maybe Detroit, Chicago, because I love Justin Fields. I think, that should be an entertaining game from him, but Goff on the road against an improved Bears defense, that might not be as fun as we'd like it to be.
Yeah, I'll be split screening. Well, I have 2 TVs, but one of them will be on the Red Zone on one side and Indy and Cincy on the other. That'll be my primary in that slot. But then I'll do the NFL Plus thing and watch the 40-minute version of every game afterward just to do the rewatch, see what I missed. Because on Red Zone, it's impossible to keep up, even with just 6 games. It is, let alone 8. All right. Before we move on to running backs, quick note from one of our sponsors, our good friends at Circa. Get ready for the ultimate big game parties at Circa Resort and Casino. Super Sunday is in Las Vegas this year. Watch the big game poolside at Stadium Swim's big game viewing party. Massive screen, booming game sound, and a view of the pyrotechnic and visual effects throughout the game. Snag the best seat in the sun with daybeds, poolside boxes, cabanas, and more. Or touchdown at the world's largest sports book, Circa Sports, for the big game bash. 3 stories of football glory featuring a 78 million pixel screen. Book your seat with a variety of reservation options, including bottle service, open bar, stadium-style food, and more. Don't miss these legendary viewing experiences on February 11th. The big game parties only at Circa Resort and Casino. Reserve today at circalasvegas.com. I'm here with Kev Mahserejian. We are talking rankings. You can check out Kevin's rankings at his Patreon. Just follow him on Twitter at RotoSurgeon. He'll point you where you need to go. Lots of good convo on his Twitter feed, too, while we're at it. Kev, let's talk running backs. You mentioned Keaton Mitchell. Where do you have him among running backs?
Top 24. I think he's a borderline must-start option this week, unless you have like a loaded running back room, which I hope you do. But yeah, no, Keaton Mitchell back end top 24. He's someone like in that AJ Dillon, DeAndre Swift range. Just guys who just feel very like week over week. You need the touchdown to get the value, because the touches can be fluky, but overall, I mean, I guess AJ Dillon gets the touches. He's just not super efficient and whatnot, but that's neither here nor there. With Keaton Mitchell, I think he got 50, 60% of the snaps last game. He's electric. He is smaller. So in like a dynasty or whatever, like a keeper format, I wouldn't be too hype on him, considering they're probably going to draft a running back. But for the rest of the season, I'm not going to say he's Devin Achane, but he has significant upside in a Baltimore Ravens run-first offense. He could catch the ball a little bit. They've used him out wide as a receiver. I want to see what he could do against a bottom 10 run defense in the Rams this week.
Yeah, I do too. I've got him at 23. It's definitely a start.
Yes.
And then I have him over Edwards finally. It took me a while to get there, but I do have him there.
Yeah. I messed up last time. They completely flipped their usage out of nowhere after Edwards had been doing so well. So that was weird. But hey, he's good. So
yeah, goal line's still going to screw us, I think, but as long as he's in on passing downs, that's what I care about. So he gets those extra touches on the outside where he'd be strongest. Zack Moss did not have a plus matchup last week. He does this week against the Bengals. Where are you on him?
Top 5. Zack Moss, I mean, he's been fantastic this season. I was a longtime Zack Moss hater, but he kind of became underrated. He had some decent, he's good in pass pro. He's an every down running back. He's a grinder by all means, but behind a good offensive line in an offense with some weapons, he could produce. And the Bengals run defense, I mean, we didn't see it last week against the Jaguars, because their run offense is just so mediocre because of their blocking. Etienne's fantastic, but again, we can see a bounce back week from Moss. Whereas last week, even though he did go off against Tennessee in their first matchup, Tyre Tart, their starting nose tackle, was out. And I believe Jeffrey Simmons was hurt. I think he got hurt again, actually, this past week.
Yes, he did.
But so their interior defensive line was just in shambles the last time they faced. This time it wasn't. So Moss didn't have the same game. I was lower on him, which is, that's kind of why it worked out in my rankings. Overall, you have to start Moss if you have him. There's no question.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. I think it's there's some tricky ones in there, like Tony Pollard versus Moss, but I guess you're going Moss for sure. Pollard, it's actually a bad matchup for Pollard. It's not that hard to question now. McCaffrey notwithstanding, you just don't run that well against the Eagles typically. A guy I like a lot this week is Pacheco again. Coming on, as long as he doesn't swing at helmets. I think that this matchup against Buffalo is a pretty good one. And, he's the one functional part of that offense. Well, one of the functional parts of this KC offense, and a possible huge game. What do you think on Pacheco?
I mean, as long as Jerick McKinnon's out, you have to start Isiah Pacheco, because he is their every down running back. Whereas, CEH comes in for 2 snaps a game or whatever. Right. Yeah, no, I think he's out today, out of practice, but it's Wednesday, so it doesn't really matter. He has a shoulder injury or shoulder. I don't know. Maybe it's a rest day. You're starting Pacheco regardless. The Buffalo's defense is okay. It's not great. It's been kind of better, but not that good recently. But you're starting Pacheco. There's no question.
Yeah. I'm waiting to hear more on DeAndre Swift, but if he's out, do you start Kenneth Gainwell? Not a great matchup, but he's going to be the guy.
Yeah, we saw early in the season he was their quote unquote workhorse. Boston Scott will likely fill in. He could maybe come in the goal line, but Gainwell's been on goal line situations throughout the season. When they're playing from behind, which I actually think this could be a very competitive game, even more so than the last time Eagles and Cowboys faced. So I'm optimistic that whichever Eagles RB starts, Dallas's run defense is worse than their pass defense. So this could be the game where they try to establish the run. And, whoever, if it's Gainwell, if it's Swift, I think one of them may have a good game. But I will say with the caveat, I don't think Swift is hurt. I think he got the wind knocked out of him at the end of the game because he walked off fine. He was just he looked just uncomfortable, which would happen if you get hit in the solar plexus.
Yeah, that is also true. The thing is, I haven't found a good update on him. So, I think that you're probably right. If there was an update to be had, we probably would have seen it by now. So, I think it's funny. Nick Sirianni at his press conference today said the Eagles brought "run the ball" sign, you guys coffee this morning. So he appreciates the passion from them. We'll see. I mean, they only ran the ball so infrequently and so poorly against the Niners. So they need to run it more and run it better, I guess.
It's very frustrating because Jalen Hurts, I think he's ailing. And a lot of their run schemes involve RPO action. So trying to get Swift and Hurts involved, you're kind of risking running Hurts, which they do not want to do. He seems to only be running when he's escaping the pocket. There are occasional instances where they'll run Hurts up the gut on a designed run play. But overall, I don't think they don't want him to get hit because he is the franchise right now. He's kind of the engine by which this offense runs, given that he is such a good rusher, and they want to preserve that for the playoffs because they're pretty much set for the, I don't know if they're going to get the bye right now, given how they've played, but they're locked for the playoffs because they're clinched and whatnot. So
yeah, but I think they'd rather win that division. That's the problem is they play Dallas this week, and if they lose, they're tied all of a sudden, and that could be problematic for them. So, but yeah, I think that's an interesting situation. The guy that I'm burying this week, and it's been too long. I waited too long to bury him, but is Austin Ekeler. They're just every run play is a fail. It is amazing to me, how their fail rate. I mean, it's just every single running play. It doesn't matter if it's Ekeler or Kelly or anybody else. They can't run block, and I think Ekeler is definitely not the same since coming back from the high ankle either.
Yeah, I definitely don't have Ekeler in his typical range, but he's still in the RB1 category because Denver's run defense is so bad. We saw Dameon Pierce come back from injury and score last week. Singletary didn't exactly have the game that he had been having, but that happens when you're Devin Singletary. I think you still have to start Ekeler solely for the fact that he's basically a workhorse, and this run defense is still very poor, whereas the pass defense is what's improved. So I'm lower on Herbert, regular ranking on Ekeler, and that's out 12.
I've got Ekeler at 17, so yeah, that's my bold move, I guess. There, but
here's the problem. You look at Joe Mixon last week, horrible matchup. He still scores twice.
Yes,
it just that's the risk you run, and this is a game where I don't really trust the Broncos offense. So I think Ekeler is very much so still going to get his usual touches. He gets it whether they're leading or behind, and high ankles suck. He does not look the same. He's probably closer to washed than we'd like, but if you're getting the touches, it's just so hard to have him too low. I was low on Mixon last week, and he burned me so bad.
Understood. I think I was too. And while I enjoyed the burning, just from a strict fandom standpoint,
yes.
Yeah, it was a burn nonetheless.
Wait, one more thing. The Patriots are top 2 in run defense too. So I don't really blame him too much for last week, whereas I think Denver's dead last or bottom 2. So
are you burying Warren and Harris this week?
If it's just Warren, he's going to be in start territory because Najee's dealing with a knee injury. I don't know if he was out of practice yesterday. So if it's just Warren, he does enough as a receiver. Trubisky runs a little bit, so they can mix things up and kind of catch the defense off guard. And yeah, if it's just Warren, you have to start him. If it's Warren Harris, I will be lower on both of them.
Yeah, to me, I think that the Pickett injury is a bigger deal than being given credit. They moved the ball in their first 2 drives, and pretty much from the moment that Pickett got hurt, that offense just ground into the muck. They were they're on the goal line. when that injury happened. They failed on fourth down after that. The Cardinals got that 99-yard drive. Of course, there's 2 storm delays. It was a weird ass game, but I think with Trubisky at the helm, though, it's just that worse of an offense, which is hard to say because Pickett's nothing special.
Yeah, Pickett isn't good. Trubisky takes more sacks, but at least he can run a little more. I mean, Pickett runs, but it's like, he's capable of it. Trubisky's actually kind of good at it. So depending on how they scheme the offense, maybe they could score like 2 touchdowns. The total's like 30.5 or something. We'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to start the defenses in this game. You don't want to start the quarterbacks, which you really want to do. But I definitely think, I mean, at home at least, Trubisky can do something. The receiver is still healthy. Freiermuth back is huge. We'll see how it looks. I think if it's just Warren, the offense could probably look better than when they have Harris back there. So
exactly, we'll indeed. I see some questions in the chat. We'll hit those at the end of the pod. Thank you for those of you streaming along with us here. Kev and I will hit those. But before we do that, we got to do a quick note from our other sponsor, Splash Sports. RotoWire is proud to partner with Splash Sports for the 2023 fantasy football season. Splash Sports empowers gaming commissioners to earn by creating contests. Commissioners can set up contests, add their style, and enjoy the ever-evolving Splash Sports platform for customized preferences. From daily to season-long contests, Splash Sports caters to various playing styles, such as DFS, Pick X, and traditional Survivor. And unlike traditional sports books, Splash Sports pitch you against friends and family, not the house. Splash goes beyond betting, a space where friends can connect, strategize, and share in the excitement of sports. RotoWire will be running weekly DFS tiers contests on Splash Sports all season. Can you beat the RotoWire experts? Visit rotowire.com/splash to enter today. Also, we are on the Blue Wire Network. We like being on the Blue Wire Network. Here are their ads. All right. Thank you for your patience there. We are talking Week 14 rankings with Kev Mahserejian at RotoSurgeon. Follow him on Twitter. Get that Patreon, and you can check out his ranks. Let's talk wide receivers. This week we lost Tank Dell, unfortunately, and that's a devastating blow. What are we doing with the remaining Houston receivers? How high does Nico Collins fly? It's a bad week against the Jets. And this is another game where take a beautiful thing and just ruin it by having them play the Jets.
Yeah, Sauce Gardner, brutal matchup. Jets offense, gross, slow, unwatchable. Man, I have to be lower on Nico this week. I can't raise him post Tank Dell. Also, he has weird away home splits. I don't really believe in those typically.
Yeah,
it's so obscene. I think they've only played like 4 road games too, so it's not like it's a massive sample. But yeah, facing a top 5 pass defense, facing a number 1, just all pro caliber corner and Sauce, which that's probably going to be the matchup, Sauce versus Nico Collins.
Yeah.
I know Stroud is fantastic. I know he could play out of, he could scramble out, he could do his thing, but I just don't want to trust Nico in this matchup. I don't trust Noah Brown either. He's coming off the knee injury. I think the only startable piece of this offense is like Dalton Schultz if he plays, because the Jets are weirdly weak against like tight ends. And I'm not the tight end guy. We all know that. But overall, it's like if Schultz practices all week and plays, you should start him. Collins, he'll be in a wide receiver 3 range, but I don't want to be starting Nico Collins. We saw what they did to Drake London last week.
Yeah,
what they've done to wide receivers all season. So yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah, all season long game, especially in New York. The opposing wide receivers have, and by extension quarterbacks, have really struggled. And we've seen some really good quarterbacks go to New York too and struggle. So I think it'll be no different for Stroud. Unfortunately, I think that's a tough spot. And of course, it's going to ruin the whole game too. DK Metcalf, he was actually on a few benches last week because of the matchup against Dallas. I heard it from customers. I heard it, the back and forth in the rankings discussion. Another bad matchup this week against the Niners. Where is he for you?
He's still in that. He's in the wide receiver 2 range. I had him wide receiver 10 last week, and that was just, I figured the game script would be very pass heavy for the Seahawks. He's been getting targeted a ton. I'm not really afraid of Deron Bland as a cornerback. I think he's been fantastic. Like, he deserves whatever nods he gets this year. Probably not DPOY. I would not give a cornerback who, is very boomer bust a DPOY consideration. But looking at, the defensive matchups, they don't really have Trayvon Diggs, who would be kind of the better matchup for DK Metcalf. So this week against SF, you should still start him, but expectations should be, very much so lower because, man, they did target Jackson Smith and Jigba like 11 times, and I think up the slot, SF is weaker than on the perimeter. It's a very weird week. Lockett is actually kind of the odd man out looking at this wide receiver core. So it's like I would start DK. If you need to start JSN and Lockett, I think he's the guy you might have to bench if you have him.
Okay. And I agree with that, by the way. I think you're absolutely right about that. Rashee Rice been getting an increasing target share, now a potential shootout game against the Bills. Where do you have Rashee Rice?
Wide receiver 2 range. I think he's shown out the last few weeks. He's playing about 70% of the snaps, which is really all you can ask in this Chiefs offense. You don't want him blocking out there like Sky Moore. But yeah, you're starting Rashee Rice. This is a matchup that Bills might win this, or Bills might have a decent lead early on because I don't know how the Chiefs move the ball. Aside from their run game is really good right now, but through the air, Rice, Kelce, Kelce does not look like prime Kelce anymore. He looks like a very good tight end, not the greatest tight end of all time. So,
yeah,
well, arguably, I'd still say it's Gronk, but that's, again, neither here nor there. You should be starting Rice because I do expect the Chiefs to have to throw a good bit this week. And, he's been targeted about near level like 15 to 18 times over the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, he has. He's in that circle of trust, and you do like to see it. Even like not a great game for the Chiefs, Rice still got his and was a startable wide receiver. Amari Cooper is in the concussion protocol. Elijah Moore got 12 targets last week in the loss to the Rams. Jacksonville secondary you can throw against. Flacco, I mean, they have no qualms about throwing the ball a lot with Flacco, at least. How high are you on Elijah Moore?
He'll be him and Nico Collins kind of in that same wide receiver 3-ish range. They'll be very close. Him, Nico, a couple others. I look at Moore with the Flacco shower connection or whatever they call it, or locker room connection, because they had it from the Jets to here. 12 targets, that's great. But the air yards, I think he had like the most air yards among anybody all season. And Flacco looks spry out there. He was slinging it last week. I know they didn't win, but they're trusting Flacco to throw. I like Stefanski as a coach. I think he's one of the smarter coaches in the NFL. He just had a very poor run of quarterbacks, as the Browns do. Flacco might be the best they've had this season. Unfortunate to say. Well, kind of fortunate because Watson's not a good person.
You hate to see it. You hate to see it category. Yeah, for sure.
But if he's starting, Trey Herndon, the slot cornerback for the Jaguars, seems to be out for this week. Like you said, they can pass on them. I don't know how much they're going to have to pass because this is such a gross game. But you get 8 targets from Moore. I think you could profit.
Yeah, I think it's possible. And it's it's funny you talked about like Collins and Moore being in the same spot. At the beginning of the season, you said Collins and Moore will be about the same spot. Yeah, sure, makes perfect sense. It's just now they've kind of gone different paths to get there. It's kind of funny.
Collins is a wide receiver 1 almost every week except this week.
Yes, exactly. So it is kind of funny there. Who's a wide receiver that you're starting this week that you wouldn't normally start?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me. I mean, Moore would definitely be one that you typically wouldn't start. So that's definitely in consideration.
Okay.
How about this? How about? Oh man, this. I don't know. Odell Beckham. How about that? Let's go with him.
Okay.
Off of the bye. Revenge game narrative because he was a Ram. They lowballed him. They did not want to keep him, considering the contracts they were trying to shell out.
Right.
So he is well within that Nico Collins, Elijah Moore range, I would say, where they lost Mark Andrews, so that first read in the offense is out. Zay Flowers is the wide receiver 1, quote unquote. Again, there's no real wide receiver 1 unless Mark Andrews is healthy. Odell could be very much so someone they try to feed at least a touchdown this week. So I like Odell as a starting option.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. And I'm kind of curious to see the game flow because, like you alluded to earlier, you can run against the Rams. And if they get off to a big lead by running, that's the only thing I worry about is volume. But that also leads to a lot of play action, hitting a big play too, and that's all we need when you're starting as your third receiver.
Odell looks good. Speaking of guys who aren't washed, I was wrong. Double ACL surgery. He looks not as fast as ever, but he still has his legs.
Yeah, he does. He does look good. I completely agree with you on that one there. Let's move on to tight ends. Last week was a tough week. We had a lot of good tight ends on bye. This week we're back to having everything. Hockenson or Kelce this week? Let's go off at the top.
It's Kelce until it's not Kelce. How about
Okay.
that? Until we see Kelce fully fall off, I'm not going to not rank him tight end 1. And hey, maybe that's why my rankings stink at tight end almost every week, except for shout out to me. But I'm like one of the worst tight end rankers. I'm not afraid to say it. But that's just because it's just like I can't figure out the back end. Those random like tight end 12 to 15 guys. I can't figure it out to save my life.
Yeah. I hear you on that one there. We all have weeks. We have blind spots in our game. And that happens to be one there. I went Hawk this week, but I think it's close. I mean, it's 1 and 1A for me pretty much. Yeah. But yeah, it's just, I think Dobbs has eyes for Hockenson in particular. They worked out together in the offseason, all that sort of stuff, blah, blah, blah. Narrative. But we're going to go there. How about you were talking about OBJ earlier? What about Isaiah Likely? Pretty good game in the first post Mark Andrews era game. I have him in my top 10 this week. Where do you have him?
Same. He's in my top 10. I think very much so in the start territory. My only, again, qualm with this matchup is they might be very run heavy. Like we discussed, the volume might not be there, but the Rams against tight ends, I know that's not the best stat to use ever because there's no such thing as tight end matchups typically, unless like you're the Cardinals for the past 5 years.
That's right. I was just going to say there's like that one like tight end team, and that's it. Yeah.
It was the Arizona Cardinals. It's not anymore unless you're Tyler Higbee. I don't get it. Nothing makes sense. I hate tight ends. But yeah, Isaiah Likely is definitely in star territory. He is, I believe, like playing like 90% of the snaps. Let me see. Oh, no, excuse me, 75%, which is still awesome. You're not going to get much better in a better offense that, Lamar does like to throw up the middle to tight ends. So
either or question for you here. And this demonstrates how far the or has fallen. Tucker Kraft or Kyle Pitts?
I'm going with Pitts.
Okay.
They did look to him last week and against, I believe it was the Jets. So that's not an easy matchup. Tampa Bay might be without Devin White and Levante David again. So that's two starting linebackers they're going to be without possibly, or they're going to be ailing if anything. So, that's huge for a tight end matchup. And Kyle Pitts, I think he didn't. I think the MCL surgery he had was a lot more significant than anybody thought coming into this season, because they were like, oh, it's just like he sprained his ACL. No, it seems like he tore it. He had like a surgery that needed 4 to 6 months to recover. So knock on wood, he's back next year. I'm going to be in on Kyle Pitts given the narratives that are going out. He's still so young. We saw that rookie year. I still believe in Pitts, and I would start him this week.
All right. I actually, my NFFC team thanks you is like, okay, feeling a little bit better about that one there. That was a totally selfish question, by the way.
You're good. I have a couple Pitts. I have a couple Pitts deletes, so I'm going to be starting them.
Yeah, that NFFC primetime in Vegas, like, I wasn't planning on Pitts at all. I didn't have him in any other league. Like the league gave him to me at pick 99. I got to take it, and walked right through that door there.
Yeah, Pitts and Njoku, it's like the same player at this point.
Yes,
so you can't really predict it. And yeah, it's unfortunate. I was big on Njoku, and that didn't work out too well because the Watson injury and the offense being so run heavy. Chubb injury, so the offense is worse too. It just everything kind of fell apart in Cleveland, which I think it's a good lesson with the Jets and the Browns. Every year I tell myself, don't draft Jets, don't draft Browns. And you see Aaron Rodgers coming, I'm like, I love Garrett Wilson now. And
yeah, me too.
See how that goes.
I've got like 4 or 5 leagues with Garrett Wilson. Yeah, love good times.
The process was right. It's just you just can't control the Browns and the Jets.
Yes, the process, man. I can hear Chris Liss yelling at me about the process right now. Let's move on. Take some Q&A before we get you out of here. We got a lot of questions in the live stream, so let's hit them up real quick. Appreciate everybody's questions here. Jeff Rogers asks, need a receiver and a flex between these three, Puka, DK, or Saquon Barkley. Who's the odd man out?
Oh, that's brutal. I want to say you start DK and Saquon because Puka has the AC joint sprain, and they might lean on Kupp more this week. They do have Tutu as well, and this is a very rough matchup against the Baltimore Ravens. I believe they're number 1 in pass defense. I will say if he gets full practices in throughout the week, I would lean Puka. But if it's like limited, maybe one full, I would go with DK. Saquon for sure is your flex.
Okay, very good.
How about you? What do you think on that?
I think I can't sit DK. I just can't. I just what happened last week. It's like he's capable of doing that against anybody. The size, it's frustrating to watch him go off because there's other weeks where he disappears. Like, why isn't this happening every week? This guy is a specimen. Why is he not like getting throw him contested balls and just see what happens? Why isn't this happening every week? I guess if you double cover a guy, it's a different thing. But anyhow, let's go on to Johnny, who asks Swift or Keaton Mitchell at the flex.
I'm going Keaton Mitchell, honestly. I think this is a very good matchup for him. Swift, yes, they do want to run the ball more, but like we said, we don't really know if he's hurt or not. And, they got Kenneth Gainwell, they got Boston Scott in the mix. Keaton, it's basically just Keaton and Gus. Justice Hill doesn't really come in anymore. So, as much as he was earlier in the season. So I would shoot for the upside.
I agree. John says, would you drop Kmet or Ingram to pick up Trey McBride or hang tight?
I feel like if you have, I guess he's on bye this week, but I would drop Kmet. Oh man, that's actually tough. I think I'd drop Kmet.
Yep. It's just who you're going to use this week, but I would too.
That's rough. I would prefer Kmet over Ingram this week, but rest of the season, if you're like clinched for the playoffs, I'd definitely drop Kmet.
Yeah. Pay attention to the waiver wire is your takeaway from all this here. You'll see some weird drops. And
McBride should not be available. That's the thing. He should be 100% rostered at this point.
Yeah, even in 6-team leagues, he should be rostered. But and maybe those exist. Quincy Davis says, need 2 receivers, 2 flex. Higgins, Noah Brown, OBJ, who we talked about earlier, Waddle, Debo, Zay Flowers, Roshan Johnson, Zeke, and Charbonnet. Charbonnet, we don't know about the knee yet. We'll find out about that. But okay, we can stipulate Debo. You can't bench Debo here. You
can't bench Waddle either. I know he's been a little hot and cold, but you got to start Waddle. You got to start Debo. I think Zay and Higgins.
That's where I'm leaning too.
Yeah, as much as I did say Odell, if you're starting Zay, I don't really want to start Odell too. And then Higgins, I think this is a good matchup for him. Where another week removed from the hamstring injury, they might double cover Jamar Chase, leave Higgins open because Higgins looked good on the targets he got.
Yeah, huge one in overtime. And I just love how he catches it with his hands out away. He's got such strong hands. I love T.
He and Quentin Johnston need to work together in the offseason, and Higgins just need to show him how to high point a ball.
I think Quentin Johnson needs to watch Little Giants and just imagine it's that toilet paper coming in there. I don't know if you saw that movie, but
here's the crazy thing. I got a rant for a second.
Yeah,
He's getting open. He's getting open, Quentin Johnson. That's the thing. I know he has bad like route success by like reception perception, but the drops he has, I'm like,
he's open.
These could be like 50-yard plays, and he's just dropping them. What if he catches them? What happens? And we know drops are, quote unquote random. Deontay Johnson had them, and then he doesn't. He has them here and there too.
Jamar Chase had them, and remember,
Devontae Adams had drops.
Yep.
Everyone, DK had drops. They all had some sort of pedigree, just like Quentin Johnson. Devontae, his second year was egregiously bad. Everyone gave up on Devontae in his second year. They're like, this guy will never happen, and then he happened. I'm not going to give up on a 21-year-old athletic freak looking. Just the way he moves off the line of scrimmage is so special. He has this quick twitch that like you look for in a wide receiver. So I'm not going to give up on Quentin Johnson, considering that again he is getting open, and this isn't a conducive offense to like wide receivers because aside from him, like yes, Keenan Allen's awesome, but he's like running up the gut. Sorry, not up the gut, but he's like running slot routes, which aren't as difficult as running on the perimeter. So I want to give Quentin Johnson a pass for at least a year.
I agree. I actually agree with that. Just for the reasons that you cite. I think you're absolutely right about that. Take a couple more here before we let Kevin go here. PPR 8-team roster. So stacked roster problem again here. Need 2 running backs and a flex. Kyron Williams, Devin Achane, Josh Jacobs, Barkley, White, Waddle, Evans. This is ridiculous.
I'll play along. I mean, Achane, you can't bench Achane. I don't think you can do that. Barkley, I think this is a really good matchup for him. And then Oh my God, Evans. I might go Evans.
I mean, I can see this 8 teams, and think about this. Williams is a pickup. HN was a pickup. Evans and Rashad White, you got super late, and all that. So I get it there. Evans, draft day. It was Evans versus Godwin, and a lot of times Godwin had the higher ADP and all that. And that one, it was like, oh, that's just a 50-50. No, it's not a 50-50 at all. It didn't work out that way, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think not that you can't start Kyron Williams, but this is a rough week for him against the Baltimore, in Baltimore too. So yeah, I think he's benchable this week. Whereas Jacobs, HN here, Evans, even Rashad White's in start territory here. But the Atlanta's run defense is weirdly good. Yeah, you got options galore. I would go HN, Barkley, Evans. Is that a yes or no for you?
That works for me. That works for me. Eric, this is the last question we'll do. Eric says, I'm out Trevor Lawrence obviously for this week. So who would you start, Dobbs or Gardner Minshew?
Like I said before, I think I'm going Dobbs in this one.
Yeah. I think so too. It's close for me. I think I might have had Minshew ahead initially, but I think you've persuaded me to that. I'm way too low on Dobbs. So
I mean, Jefferson is huge, man. Like getting Jefferson.
Are we sure that Jefferson's playing?
I'm pretty sure he's going to play. Like they're still in the playoff hunt, and he seems like he wants to play. Like he wants to break records throughout his career. So
yeah, and yeah, that's the whole thought was he'll come back after the bye. I know they activated him from the IR, but that doesn't. They had to. They were at that 3-week window too. So it was kind of one of those things I was kind of waiting for. All right, we're gonna let everybody go here, but Kev has a Patreon. RotoWire has rankings. Kev has rankings. Check out Kev's rankings. Go to @RotoSurgeon. Check out the RotoSurgeon Patreon. You can go to check out my rankings, rotowire.com/pod. Get that free trial of RotoWire. Use our Ask an Expert service. Lots of different options for you here to get your questions answered. So, Kev, I want to thank you. You jumped on in short notice, helped us out. You have great rankings. You're having a great year, and it's always a fun conversation with you.
Jeff, thank you for having me on. And my rankings wouldn't be where they are without all of the wonderful tools, whether it be RotoWire and their advanced stats and whatnot, RotoBaller, where I do write everywhere. RotoBaller, RotoWire, a lot of Roto options you got. But I'm not just making up things out of thin air. I have these tools at my hands that I utilize, and I'm very grateful for you and your company and the work you guys put in, because really I would be nobody without them, because that's where I get all of my data. So thank you.
We all benefit from the others before us, right? And all the great work in it. Our community is massive now too. You saw it like at the live Scott Fishbowl that you and I were both at, different leagues, but there's 5 drafts going on at once there. And you see how vast our community has become, and it's awesome. So,
and it's so much fun. This is literally what I look forward to. I mean, we got baseball coming up in the midst of basketball season. Fantasy, as much as it stresses us out, I love this game, and I love playing, and I love talking to guys like you who share the same passion.
Absolutely. It's just one of the greatest steals in life that this is my job. Oh, yeah. I love it.
Exactly.
Absolutely love it there. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We got, of course, John and Mario tomorrow. Lock it in. Thanks for listening to RotoWire.